For a non-developer, can you kind of talk me through what is a bug scrub?
A bug scrub is we will take a list of bugs. So we have core Trac, which lists every issue that anyone has ever had with WordPress, and we'll take all the open ones and we'll generate a list. We have a number of existing reports of various focuses, various statuses, various components, and you'll work through one list and kind of go through one by one, looking at each one. From there, you're kind of looking at, okay, what is the status of this? Like, is this still a bug? There are times we find, actually, we fixed this accidentally. What's more common is like, we changed this feature in such a way that this is no longer an issue. We'll look at, is there a fix? If so, a fix proposed for it. If so, like, does that actually solve it? How can we get this into core? And then from there, it's, making sure that we can get things into the right milestones. So right now, working off of the 6.9, which would be the next major next year, and then 6.8.2, which will be the next minor release.
Hey everybody, it's Roger with Kinsta. I'm joined again by a good friend, Aaron. Hey Aaron, how you been?
I'm great. How are you, Roger?
I'm doing really well. It's great to see you and kind of talk some WordPress contribution stuff here a little bit. It seems like May has still been a busy month, even though there's not a major release. What have you been up to?
So a lot of May has been focused on kind of getting things set up for future releases. And so as a part of that, doing some bug scrubs. International Global Accessibility Awareness Day was earlier this month, and as a part of that, ran a accessibility-focused bug scrub where we kind of looked at some of the oldest tickets that are related to accessibility and trying to figure out, like, okay, like, is this still something that we want to try to fix? Like, is this actually related to accessibility? How can we, kind of push that forward and kind of drive some of those fixes to help out some users?
I bet Joe Dolson was super excited about this.
Oh, yeah. And Joe was a big part of it. He was super helpful. He's amazing.
Absolutely. Was there anything that stood out to you that was like, wow, major accomplishment achieved here?
I mean, so we looked at a number of bugs that had not been looked at in maybe like 7 or 8 years. And, we're able to find some that are like, okay, this is definitely a bug, but it's not necessarily an accessibility focused bug. And so, had a couple of those and had one that I'm still digging into a little bit that like we might have to no fix just because it's like, well, at this point, if we change the experience, we're not going to be able to make it like that much better. And so you got to balance things for users, and like consistency can be very important. And things, if it's worked some way for 7 years, unless it's actually going to be better, don't change it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. For a non-developer, can you kind of talk me through what is a bug scrub?
A bug scrub is we will take a list of bugs. So we have core Trac, which lists every issue that anyone has ever had with WordPress, and we'll take all the open ones and we'll generate a list. We have a number of existing reports of various focuses, various statuses, various components, and you'll work through one list and kind of go through one by one, looking at each one. From there, you're kind of looking at, okay, what is the status of this? Like, is this still a bug? There are times we find, actually, we fixed this accidentally. What's more common is like, we changed this feature in such a way that this is no longer an issue. We'll look at, is there a fix? If so, fix proposed for it. If so, like, does that actually solve it? How can we get this into core? And then from there, it's, making sure that we can get things into the right milestones. So right now, working off of the 6.9, which would be the next major next year, and then 6.8.2, which will be the next minor release.
Okay. All right. Very cool. As you're working forward, 6.8.2 is coming around the corner. What are we looking at for that? Where's the big focus?
So that's going to be another maintenance focused release related to things that are primarily things that are outstanding from 6.8. There's still, there are a handful of issues that we weren't able to get to in 6.8.1 or that weren't reported until, either fairly late or after 6.8.1. And so That'll be the primary focus for the next one. And then looking at a future 6.8 release that'll probably be focused on accessibility.
Okay.
And Joe, I'm sure, is going to play a major role in that. And, hoping to also get some more of the accessibility community involved there.
Okay, well, that's good to know. We'll make a big shout out. When you're looking for the accessibility community, are you looking for people on the development side or more on the user side to kind of test things out?
Both.
Okay.
I think that, hearing from people that actually use assistive technologies is always valuable.
Okay.
I can use a screen reader, but I'm not good at using a screen reader.
Sure.
I do not use it in the same way that someone that's actually using it on a day-to-day basis is. And so hearing their experiences and hearing, what they have to say about proposed fixes is very valuable.
Okay, excellent. Well, we need to get more people ramped up and in there. As far as the project in general goes, everything exciting? Are you looking for more contributors still to help out?
I mean, always. WordPress thrives off of people coming and helping out. And that can be joining a bug scrub. Those are announced on make.wordpress.org/core. Joining the weekly developer chats, which are on Wednesdays at, I forgot what time UTC, but it is 10 a.m. Central US time. So we're done with that.
As far as for people, coming in, we've talked about this a lot, but I think it bears repeating. If somebody's not necessarily a developer, but they're interested in getting involved, what are some general guidelines you would share with people in terms of etiquette? When they're commenting in Slack and on these posts, what's some of the homework maybe they should do before they start really jumping in with both feet?
So the biggest etiquette piece is assume good intent. Assume if someone, is asking a question that they are asking out of genuine curiosity, and about, the desire to actually understand it. Assume that no one is trying to make WordPress worse. If you are in there, if you're advocating for something, it's because you think that's important and think it's valuable. And so this, that leads to the second etiquette piece, which is share your opinions, especially share them in respectful ways. Don't have all caps on, but also if someone says, hey, you're being very aggressive, maybe take that feedback and understand, okay, step back for a second. And then, from there, getting involved, show up, be a part of it. We are here to help. If you have a question, ask in the core Slack room. You might get directed to another room, but that's always a great place to start with your questions.
Excellent. It's interesting. I talked with some other open source maintainers, and the rise of AI has been this double-edged sword. In some ways, or in a lot of ways, it helps speed up the work, and you can do this vibe coding and all that fun stuff. On the flip side, some of the maintainers are finding that a lot of bug reports are being clearly generated in AI. And when they test the people on, do you know what you just submitted? And if they can't, they get banned. How is the WordPress community handling this rise of AI-generated bug reports?
So, we actually just started a new AI team.
Yes.
And that got announced yesterday for when we're recording this.
Yeah.
And it is going to be looking at some of the things like that. But I think the big thing is, as a whole, you have to either be very obviously a bot that's not trying or trying to do harm to get banned.
Okay.
Getting banned from Trac is not something that any of the core managers I'm aware of, will just do.
Okay.
And in fact, I don't even know how to ban someone from Trac without banning them from the project as a whole. And that's well beyond what I would, have power or desire to do.
Sure.
And so, I think the AI bug reports, some of them can be good. There are many people, I think, that, especially people that struggle with English as a first language, to, express themselves.
Sure.
Being able to, share a couple of thoughts and be and make this sound better. For some people, that can be, very helpful for them.
Absolutely. And I think, maybe the dichotomy I'm explaining here is people will just take blocks of code, throw it into AI, say, find all the bugs. And a lot of times that's generating a lot of nonsense. But I think the approach you're talking about here, and this is something I'm even advocating for, is I'll see an issue with something and I'll try and write out like a draft of what I think might be helpful. But then I will take that and I'll run that through whatever, LLM and just say, hey, I'm trying to file a bug report for this project. Help me like analyze what I'm trying to write here so it comes out better, and, ask me clarifying questions and stuff like that. And I think there's a really interesting use case there. Are you seeing people kind of following some sort of guidelines at all yet, or is it still just early days?
Still very early days. I mean, the method you just talked about is actually something that I used not long ago.
Okay.
We were having a discussion in Trac about an issue. It was specifically related to there's a very old way in multi-site of serving the images.
Okay.
It hasn't been in use, it's not the default, it's not used on very many sites, which means that it's not necessarily tested heavily. And so, I was like, all right, I want to actually try, how can we help educate people about this and make it so that we don't introduce new bugs related to it. And so I used AI to help me formulate the ticket that I opened for it.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. I think this is really where the benefit of these tools come from, right? Is augmenting what you're already doing, not automating yourself out of work or whatever. Mm-hmm. Kind of like how spell check and grammar check kind of helps improve your writing. Maybe with AIs we can help improve our thinking, but we still need to have a person in the middle working on all this stuff. Looking forward with the project, is there anything you're really excited about working with other people on and getting implemented into the program?
So I'm excited to see where this AI group goes. And so I think, the focus is primarily going to be on how can it be used to help the end users, but I think there's also going to be some questions about how it can be used to help the contributor experience. GitHub has their Copilot AI for doing code analysis and code review. Is that something that we are going to be able to take advantage of? I think it's something that, is, something we probably can start experimenting with, because ultimately it is going to be a human that makes a decision of, is this code ready? But that doesn't mean it can't be helped by AI.
Sure. All right. Very exciting. And I guess something to just dovetail and finish off with here, there's two kind of basic structures from my understanding of how WordPress code works. So there's Trac, which is that's been there forever. And then now, there's GitHub, and that's used primarily for the block editor. Can you kind of help explain this a little bit?
Yeah, so Trac is the bug tracker that's been in place for some time of around 20 years.
Yeah.
And that has, reports, enhancements, features related to basically all of WordPress except for the editor focus pieces. And the editor is both the site editor and the post editor. And those are in a GitHub repository, the Gutenberg GitHub repository. WordPress core, in Trac, you can upload a patch, which is just, uploading a file that says the changes you want to make. Also, you're able to submit a pull request in GitHub, and that will sync over to Trac. And so, we're able to take advantage of things like the GitHub code review tools and the automations that we have set up. And so, things like the PHP coding standards that get checked and the unit tests that run. So, GitHub is used extensively in both Trac and GitHub.
Okay. Do you feel that causes any confusion for people that are coming into the project?
It definitely can be a little confusing. And so if people are getting confused, ask a question and someone can probably help guide you and help you have the best experience possible with contributing.
Excellent. Is there any plan to get rid of Trac at any point, or what's kind of the horizon there?
There's no plans to get rid of Trac right now, at least none that I have be aware of. I love many parts of Trac. I think that one of the things that I really like about it is that it keeps it's issue focused rather than solution focused. And so you talk about, what the problem is and try to really understand the problem, whereas oftentimes in GitHub it's very easy to jump into discussing the solution. And because of the way that they have, pull requests, it's very easy to focus on solutions, which sometimes solve the problem, but sometimes don't get to the actual root of the issue.
Interesting. Interesting. Do you see any kind of a shift happening on the GitHub side of things with that, or is it pretty much set in stone that way?
I mean, that's up to GitHub.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
think that the way they have it set up, it works for a lot of, I would say smaller projects, and it works for a lot of, like corporate focused projects. Whereas open source, I think, is the one area that kind of, struggles with. And so, because we want to focus on what is the actual problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah, no, and that's, it's really fascinating to kind of hear that. I would just, as someone mostly on the outside, I've always thought like a Trac and GitHub, they're kind of like competing. But the way that you're explaining it now, it sounds like Trac really works in a lot of ways better for WordPress. So very fascinating stuff. Aaron, as always, man, I really appreciate hearing your insights and kind of hearing how everything's going with the project. As always, to close out, if people are interested in getting in touch with you, what is the best way for them to reach out?
The best way is to come to my WordPress website, Aaron.
Excellent. All right. Well, Aaron, it's great talking to you. I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Be
Great,
well.
and be wonderful. Bye.